As someone who served at a restaurant, sit-down restaurant, where how well you were a server really played into how much money you took home that night, I'm always fascinated by the debate over the questions of tipped wages and whether or not that even should be a thing. Well, up in Chicago, they're looking at possibly getting rid of tipped wages. What does that mean for you, the consumer, wanting to go out to a restaurant? Would love to hear your thoughts at 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. Let's take a look at the Chicago Tribune here, reporting that Chicago could become largest U.S. city to independently abolish tipped wages under Mayor Brandon Johnson's compromise. And it goes on to talk about how Chicago would be the largest American city to move on its own to abolish a sub-minimum wage for tipped workers under a deal reached Monday between Mayor Brandon Johnson's allies in the city council and the restaurant lobby. So you had a proposal from the Illinois Restaurant Association that would have ultimately, increased the tipped wage, but also would have allowed for 3 times enforcement against restaurants that don't make up a tipped wage to what is the minimum wage. So for people who aren't familiar, and maybe even how this is characterized, calling it a sub-minimum wage, it's only a sub-minimum wage until when that person goes to clock out. And then when they clock out, if they find out that their tips they received that evening, either credit card tips or cash tips they claim, if those don't add up to the minimum wage, the restaurant has to make up that difference. So say you go in for a 5-hour shift. And it's a slow day. For whatever reason, there's just not a lot of people. You only get one table and they tip you $5 or whatever, and you're sitting around for the 5 hours. Well, you must be paid at least the minimum wage for the difference in what you don't make in tips. So that's how the tipped wage works, and that's why you have the sub-minimum wage for tipped employees. But the whole idea of tipped wage, it's based off of getting those tips. And the idea is indeed merit-based. So when you have the idea of removing that merit-based incentive for a server to do a not just good job, but to go above and beyond, that incentive, is it removed if they're not getting tips? If they're all getting paid the same, what's to distinguish a rock star server or a rock star bartender versus somebody who's just there to go along to get along and to clock in and out, and they're taking their 15-minute break. They don't care that your food's sitting in the window. They're on their break. So is it going to take away that incentive, and what does this ultimately mean for the consumer? I'll tell you, the wife and I, when we were up in the Indiana sand dunes, we went to this wonderful restaurant. It was in an old historic house in some place close to Portage, Indiana. And it was a wonderful experience. We sat out on the porch, and it was just a nice, cool evening, and great service from beginning to end. We walk up, go into the old house, and there's a young hostess there. Instantly greets us. Wonderful environment. She's like, you want to sit inside or outside? Let's sit outside. Okay, great. Here's some menus, and your server will be right with you. Somebody else came out with water almost instantly, put it on the table, said your server will be right with you. Server comes out, gives us the specials, answers all of our questions, talks about what's on the menu, takes our appetizer order and our drink order, and then about 2 minutes later, the hostess comes back and says, how we doing? Everything okay? And that hostess came back 2 or 3 times. And then you had the server, just impeccable service, and we tipped. I tipped like 22% on the bill. So obviously I was very appreciative of the entire operation. Because listen, when you tip, it's not just going to the server. In a lot of restaurants, that tip is split with the bartender, with the bus service, with those who come and clean the table, and even with the host. So the tips really do go a long way, and it's, in my opinion, it encourages that type of extra level service. But what are your thoughts? 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. Again, the new substitute ordinance in Chicago, according to the Tribune, it would essentially mandate Chicago businesses offer tipped workers the same minimum wage as all other employees in the city within the next 5 years. And it's a measure that could do away with tips altogether. But let's hear from you at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number, getting these phone calls lined up. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Yourself?
So my two daughters had started serving in the last 2 years, and if you're doing it just to get by, to only make the minimum, you're not going to last very long.
Nope.
Because it's profitable.
It is.
My daughters did it as far, and it's $35-$40 an hour if you're hustling.
If you're hustling, and that's the thing, it's you got to have the initiative, and you have a good night, and you can walk out of there with a couple of $100 cash in hand, and that's obviously going to help anybody who works weekends, or if you have a busy lunch day, you could make some bank. I mean, it really is a profitable venture, no question.
I don't think the ones that would settle for 15 or whatever it is now, 12 an hour, I don't think they'd last very long, though, because that's too hard to work for $12 an hour. It's not worth it.
Yeah, so you're saying essentially it would take away the incentive.
No, it would take the slackers would try to do it just to make the $12 an hour, but
right.
It's too hard to work. You get yelled at, you get treated like crap. I think at the beginning you might have people that would do it just for that. But it would come back around, and you would have the rock stars would still be making money, would still be going above and beyond.
Gotcha. All right. Appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. Talking about tipped wages and Chicago looking to possibly end tipped wages. What will that do to the menu prices? Will it double the cost of that burger and fries? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning.
Hey.
Hey, TIP. TIPE. It stands for to inspire promptness.
Huh,
you know, if you're gonna tip, you tip well, but you're not obligated to tip. I mean, if you get crappy service, I'm not putting a $20 bill against dinner if the waiter or waitress, didn't really care about the service that he or she was providing. Right. But if you got a kick-ass waiter or kick-ass waitress and they're on the ball, 25-30% is not out of the ordinary.
No question.
You spend $100 on dinner, give them a $35 tip, and especially if they deserve it, you got to do it.
Yep. No, and listen, as somebody who worked in the restaurant industry as a server, as a bartender, I was all over the place. I didn't mind taking 8 tables and bam, 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 hitting them all up, right, and just getting business done, taking care of those customers. And I have that perspective going into restaurants, and I love when I experience good service and the interaction with the servers even. For instance, one of the restaurants we went to up in Indiana was on State Park Beach of Lake Michigan, and we had lunch. It was wonderful. I ordered a beach Cobb salad, and the server said, "Would you like to add a skewer of steak onto that?" I looked at her and said, "Way to upsell. Yes, I will take that steak skewer with my beach Cobb salad." So obviously I tipped well, even though she upsold me, increasing the total cost of the bill, which would increase how much I would tip. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Your thoughts?
I think it's a dumb idea because it's going to discourage good service, as you point out. I think this is another example of the liberals proposing something, looking for a problem. And I just think it's a bad idea.
And you've got a lot of people pushing for this, saying, hey, they need to, get to the minimum wage. But again, they already should be getting the minimum wage. If they're not making the tips to make up the minimum wage by the end of their shift, the restaurant's supposed to make that difference up. And if they're not, they should be investigated by the Department of Labor.
Oh, please. Restaurants are not meant to be lifetime work. It's where you start there, you get an education, you improve yourself so that you can move up. Whatever happened to that?
Well, and listen, that does happen a lot, but there are some who, later on in life, they want to make some extra money, and they'll welcome working weekends to make that cash money as supplemental income. And even that is a profitable enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
I think you're basically going to end up with people with attitudes that are no different than going to a fast food restaurant. You're going to have people that put out exceptional service who are going to end up walking away from the job if it ends.
And that could diminish the overall workforce for dining service. Your phone breaking up a little bit. Appreciate it, though. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Yes, I agree with your one caller. What has happened in this country? I agree. Servers, that was a career. But as far as I worked at the Georgian, do you remember the Georgian?
I don't remember the Georgian, no.
Pardon me?
I don't, no.
Okay, that was at South Grand and 9th Street. And I did dishes there for years and years and years. I did it when I was in high school. When I would get out of school and I'd go straight to work because I had a car at 16 and I needed gas. So how did I afford my gas? I had to go to work.
That's right.
I had to go to work. So I did dishes at the Georgian for years and years and years.
Nice.
And that was just a stepping stone, and that's the way it was in America. There was other jobs out there. We could go to work at factories and things like this. We had other places that we could actually go and become somebody and raise a family. That's all gone away. And now grown men and people were looking to restaurants and things like this as careers, and it's terrible. We need to bring factories and manufacturing back into this country, and until we do, there's no answer to it.
Appreciate the call. I will say, there's different caliber of restaurants, right? There's, places in Springfield that are chains that you can pretty much find anywhere around the country. But then there's places that are unique, locally owned, and that is a wonderful place to have a career, quite frankly. If you're going to an up-end restaurant, where the service is impeccable, they come out and they explain to you what the fish special is and what kind of fish it is. They explain to you the steps it goes into making this particular cocktail or the types of sauces that are on their appetizer, or they take that time, and it's a really wonderful atmosphere, and they wait on you and your every need you have. Those servers, those upscale restaurant servers, make good money, and it very easily could become a career if it's done right, and they can make that money and even move up into management and so on. Who knows? Maybe make their own restaurant happen. Let's take a few more calls here, lining up, talking about tipped wage. Chicago looking to get rid of it. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, Greg, where did this come from? Did some politician get PO'd or something about that? Where did this come from?
There's an advocacy group. I forget what their title is, but they're kind of like a loose union of sorts. Restaurant Workers Association or something like that.
My second point being is, first of all, this is ridiculous. My second point being, and I've called before about this. I wait at tables, and you are taxed based on what you sell.
Yep.
At least at the restaurant I work at, we did. We had to claim at least 10%. This was back in the 90s of what we sold. So the computer kept track of everything you sold, and you at the end of the night had to claim at least 10% for tax reasons. Okay, so you're taxed based on what you sell, and people don't understand that.
Yep.
So therefore, if you don't get your tips in return, well, you got to earn them first, obviously, but you get taxed on stuff on money you didn't even make if you didn't make it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and again, the restaurant has to make the difference up. If you don't make the equivalent of minimum wage with the hours worked versus what tips you do get, the restaurant has to make that difference up. And you're right, you do get taxed on your tips. Cash tips, claim 10%. For credit card tips, those are automatically claimed and calculated. One last call here before the break. Good morning, you're on WMAY. Your thoughts?
Morning, my friend. I think the caller before had it right on the money that, it's what they did back in the day. And like you were saying, too, the high-class restaurants, there's tons of different types, like some pizza joint, whenever they bring your pizza out for you to sit down, that's totally different than like a, mom-and-pop brick-and-mortar diner than compared to some 5-star, Michelin grade sit down place.
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna pay for that service. You're gonna pay for that, waiter and that type of experience, to be honest. And I think that's really truly what it is. Like, if you go to Osaka here, that's a totally different type of experience for your food.
Right.
But of course, whenever you get down to brass tacks about it, Chicago's done everything right. So what we really need to do is just mimic everything about Chicago, and everything's going to just fall into place, right? No, that's not going to happen. I mean, Chicago is definitely on the forefront of, hold my beer, and everything's going to get worse.
All right, I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970 is the phone number. Tipped wage possibly going by the wayside in Chicago as they look to essentially abolish that over several years. It's a measure that's got to go through the city council, but we'll see where that ultimately lands.